the statistics, right? We're not looking at the fact that we are one of the worst places in teacher pay, one of the worst places as far as, pollution and healthcare, one of the worst places for education. Like did you want to say something, Stephanie? Go ahead.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because in my little part of the world where I live in agriculture and food most of the time, it's real interesting because as Hoosiers, I think all of us think of Hoosiers as agricultural, right? We kind of take a little bit of sideways pride in being that, flyover corn state, right? Well, interestingly enough, although we are top 10 in the country for agriculture, we import over 95% of what we consume here in Indiana. We also don't have the capacity to process the things that we do grow here, whether it's edible for humans or not. So we grow primarily corn, soybeans, and pork, and we can't process any of that in state in any way that makes any sense. And so small and medium processors have been driven out of business over the last 20, 30 years, as well as small and medium farms. And we talk about parts of the city that we neglect. The reason I'm running for county at large is because what I've said for years, I walked away from my job to serve the community at large, to serve as an independent contractor. And when people ask me who I work for, I see the community because I consider myself organizationally agnostic, because I found that I couldn't find an organization or an entity or a department that could meet the needs of all of the community without the restrictions that I felt were unnecessarily in place. We have rural communities that are getting bought out and driven out of business and out of their properties because of so many different factors. We have a suicide rate in our rural communities that should be appalling to everyone and is on par for some of the, mortality rates that we have in the inner city, but they don't have the voices for people to hear that. And it's so much us against them, city versus rural, this quadrant against that. And I'm running at large because we're all part of this community. And I don't care where you're from or, where you shop or where you sleep, because we're all part of this together. And there's a lot of issues. You're right, Kawhi. There's a lot of things that, we can spend a lot of time recognizing the good things that we're doing. But COVID, I think, is, signals the beginning of a new time where, yes, it's good to recognize the things that we're doing well, but we really need to be serious about our problems, because the only way we can make improvements is to be serious about the significance of the issues.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. That's a great segue into our questions too. That's awesome. Alicia, did you want to ask the first question, or you want me to?
No, you can go ahead.
All right. So this first question is about the debacle with our sheriff. And it is, we know that recently the sheriff had an altercation with a young man. The council voted for the taxpayers to fit the bill for his lawsuit or whatever it was. And what other ways could the council have acted in order to spare using those resources to pay for his misdeeds?
Are you asking me first, or Stephanie? Or
Melissa, go ahead. You can go first.
Well, from my understanding, they didn't really have an option. And that was why the letter came out afterward, that they all disagreed with doing it, and it would have cost the county more had they not, from what I understand. And so that was why they put in that letter to, for him to pay it back, and from my understanding that he did. So I don't know all the details. I don't know all the behind the scenes. I don't know all, maybe Stephanie has a better, feedback on this, but from what I understand, if they had done it differently, it would have costed the county more. So, because if they would have taken it to trial, then it could have potentially cost us more. And then the settlement, that's why they paid for the settlement of that. So that is my understanding. Again, I don't have all the details. I don't know, but that is what I understand. So you're making a face that maybe that's bold, but like I said, this is what I am understanding. So I could be totally wrong, but from the information that I have received, that is what I understand. And that was why the letter came out from the county council afterward. From what I understand, nobody on that council felt that the county should pay for any of it. But based upon the way it was tied in, they didn't really have a choice, from what I understand.
I have a follow-up question for that, but I'm going to let Stephanie answer the question first. Thank you for that answer, Melissa.
Yeah, I think Melissa hit a lot of the main points, but there are a few things where I think that county council could have done things differently, and that is, I consider myself an intersectional development specialist. I like to look at where different systems and different processes overlap, and so in this situation, it's recognizing all of the people and all of the parties who were at play in making that decision. And so for that, you need to understand that for the County of Allen, we have 3 commissioners, and those 3 commissioners are responsible for entering into agreements on behalf of the county. They're the ones that say yes or no in signing contracts or signing agreements and things. County council then, the mayor's administration officially, writes the budget, but the commissioners can enter into agreements on behalf of the county. And then the county council can make changes to that budget and question that budget. And then city council has the sole, tandem thing of they have to approve it and they can only cut it. They can't add anything, they can't change anything, they can cut stuff, which is where they ask things. So all of that to say, at the county council meeting where this came up, county council could have kicked this back to the commissioners for an additional review. Now, the thing is that you have to understand that the commissioners have already agreed to pay for the sheriff's legal fees and to pay for these court cases and whatnot, specifically out of the general fund. And that was the decision that I would question on council and have a conversation with the commissioners about. The reason I started with communication is because the communication between commissioners, county council, city administration, and actual city staff, much less the citizens of our community, is the biggest issue, and everyone knows it. And I literally know more about how individuals and different departments work and how their work impacts other organizations or other departments than people in those departments do. That's a problem. That's stuff that we need to work on because we have too many miscommunications, bad communications, ego issues, and a lot of, tracing it back to where did this start? And it's not just taking it out of the police budget or the sheriff budget or whatever. It's also looking at these agreements and who's making these agreements and what those agreements are and who ends up paying for those agreements when it's all said and done. I said this the other day and I'll say it again. I would be interested in having a conversation. And of course, this would have to be a negotiation with the police union, but this would be my opening negotiation would be, instead of that coming out of the general fund, those funds come out of the police pension. Police your own or pay for it yourself because it shouldn't come out of our pocket because that should incentivize them to, I don't know, maybe not do things like this. It's great that they wrote the letter after the fact. I would like to mention, as much as I love Sharon, this letter came from Joe Benz. And also another caveat with the recent budget approval, the prosecutor and the sheriff got increases in their budgets while no one else did. And no one mentioned this except for Joe Benz voted against it. And it still went through. So there's a lot of things.
We have a comment from Jorge Fernandez. He says the trial expense would have been expensive, which is why it doesn't make sense. Gave the county prosecutor a 9% raise, which gave Gladio a slap on the wrist. So that was his comment as far as that goes. I mean, it kind of plays into, I believe, our a question we have here. Actually, it's further on down the list, but regarding Karen Richards' recent request to increase her office budget, would you have voted yes or no, and why? I want to start with you, Melissa.
I mean, without seeing everything just off the cuff, I don't think I would have voted yes. But like I said, I don't know for sure what, the main request is, what everything was, but I don't think I would have, based upon the fact that, what she cited, from what I did see, what she cited was extra hours that she needed to review cases, which I felt like a lot of the cases should have been thrown out anyways regarding the protesters, because they were not felonies. They were not high charge, charges. And I was down there 2 nights, and I was 20 feet from getting tear gas, the second night. And one of my pastors, who's one of the pastors at our church, got tear gassed while he was praying for people. So, my short answer is no, but again, without seeing everything, that's pretty much what I can say.
Yeah. What about you, Stephanie?
Alicia, I know you were part of the conversation when I tried to, bring this up during the protests, that the protests were going to be used against the community come fall. I did try to tell people. I knew this was going to happen. That's my gift. My gift is foresight. I see patterns. I've been paying attention for a long time, and I'm trying to plan for the future. Literally, Gallup Strength Finders. I'm 4 out of 5 in strategic in my top 5. I see what's going on. I've researched what's happening and what they're likely to do, and I try to plan for it. I knew this was coming. No, I wouldn't have approved it. I would have, raised questions. Too many of our elected officials are going through the motions. They don't want to do the work. I'm that weird person that actually does the work. I've got extra copies of the budget if anybody wants them. They're only like 300 pages a piece, but I made an extra copy or 2.
I think one of the things that is just baffling to me is the way that we have really relinquished so much of our control over what our tax dollars do and what they pay for. I think it's just insane to me that it would even be a reasonable solution to take the fees and the lawsuit expenses out of the money that taxpayers pay. He was not in an official capacity, as I understand it, when the incident occurred. And so I really don't understand why on earth that would even be an issue that the people would have to be worried about. That is just
Kidway, if I can. So the thing is, people haven't been showed up. You have to understand, like, communities are run, decisions are made by the people who show up, and not the people who show up late, who show up 6 months after the fact to complain about something that happened. They plan these things on purpose, and they're all written down. They're all posted. This is all public knowledge. And what's really disappointing is how much our community has been disengaged for so long. I have been trying desperately, to get people to come to meetings. Like, I'll give people rides. I'll make you dinner. Just come and understand what's going on. Like, put a little time into realizing the power that we do have before you give it up.
Why do you think people are so disengaged? And that's just a question.
Systemic training. I mean, civics has been removed from our schools. Civics has been removed from our schools. They've defunded or eliminated positions, programs, opportunities. I mean, I literally just got an email from Justin Bushy about paid internships for Senate positions. Those are probably not going to kids of color. There aren't any opportunities like that. I went to DC and I met with the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and we talked about their fellowship program. I was a reviewer for the applications this last year, and we don't have any kids going into that program. We have little or no awareness of pipelines like that because they have been severed and cut off if they ever existed. We have a lot of work to do, and it's not just on the streets, it's in the boardrooms, it's online, it's research, it's preparation, getting our young people like prepared and educated for these opportunities and helping to create the opportunities for them. I'm running for council because I am creating space. I know I'm late, but I recently watched the Harriet Tubman movie. I loved it. Absolutely love it. It's part of like my playlist that like I rock to every day, and I go to create a place for you. I am running for council to create space. And where I go, I create space, and then I fill that space with others, and then I create more space. And everywhere I go, I create more space and more conversations. And we have to do that in our community in every way possible.
Absolutely. Melissa, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything Stephanie said. And I don't even think that this is yes, it's definitely a Black issue when it comes to not training, not, removing civics, but I think this is just an education issue. You can see now in our country, white, Black, brown, Hispanic, whatever color you are, people are not educated on politics. People are not educated on economics. People are not educated on this process. I mean, I have people that I went to, I was in political science for my bachelor's degree, calling me like, before they're going in to vote, what should I vote like this time? So people that even have, we should literally have a politics or an economics class every school year starting at age kindergarten. Literally, we have one your senior year that you have to graduate and you learn, and that's it. We do not understand, and it's intentional. It's intentional that we're not educated because Common said, if your vote didn't matter, why would they work so hard to keep it from you? The bottom line is they keep it from us because it's power, and the power is in the hands of the people that have money to run. Don't get me wrong, I've worked on political campaigns before, but I had absolutely no clue what it takes to run a political campaign and to run it to get your name out there. The reason the system is intentionally set up the way it is because they have the power, they have the money, and they have the control, and they don't want to give it up.
And as a caveat to that, I would like to add, that is why I'm running a cashless campaign, because I want to, if nothing else, have a conversation about running for office and political service in our community. Civic engagement shouldn't cost $25,000, $50,000, $75,000. That's unreasonable. We are a representative democracy that thrives on it's a participatory sport, and when you make that a cost thing that is so hinged on such a high, threshold of entry, then that's extremely discouraging for participation. And that's to the detriment of our entire society and our communities at the most. And personally, I'd like to add that I think local offices should all be nonpartisan, because this partisan monopoly on positions and election boards and everything else like that is just another way to control the spending in our community. And that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are getting to it today, boy. I tell you what. You got another question for us, Alicia?
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, so the next question is, do you feel like Black and brown members of the community have adequate representation in Fort Wayne? And what would you suggest or support regarding representation in Allen County and Fort Wayne? Start with Stephanie.
Okay. Representation of Black and brown people, adequate? Come on. I'm a recent graduate of Greater Fort Wayne's Leadership 2.0. I am I'm not going to say I'm the only minority that was in the class of 9, but I'm the only minority female. And it was a very small class, I recognize. Leadership 1.0, when I graduated with my class in 2018, gosh. I was one of 2 women of color, people of color, actually, in our class. And I mentioned to the Greater Fort Wayne staff at the time, and repeatedly since, that was not acceptable because that is not representative of our community. And I don't want to hear that it's representative of what we have in our community, because we should be training the future leaders of our community. So we should be training the leaders that represent the community that we want to have. And that means that we need to invest in young people of color and finding them in different places. And I've been working on projects and proposals to that effect. Unfortunately, COVID made a lot of that need to get reworked, and we're working on reworking that as the world is trying to come to terms with our new normal. But absolutely, there's not adequate representation in any way, on any level, in any of the leadership positions in our community, and everyone knows it.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Melissa?
I agree. We don't have adequate representation. I go back to my statement: if we're not being intentionally inclusive, we're being unintentionally exclusive. And I think so I was teaching a class at PFW a few weeks ago, and we're very diverse, the students I have. And I posed a question to the entire class, and I said, you know, when you walk into a room, what do you see? I said, I can almost promise you people of color look around for somebody else that's of color. White people don't look, and don't, because our unconscious bias, one, our privilege, and it's not something that we think about. Now, I didn't always do that, but maybe starting 10 years ago, that's the first thing I do, because I am being intentional, because it's something I had to learn as a white person. It's not something that I live. So in my opinion, that intentionality is imperative for my people to be aware of what we need to do to make sure that we have representation at all levels, because the people that are in power are white. So if we are not aware of this, then we're not thinking about it as something that is needing to happen. So it's not going to change until we become aware of the need for it.
Right. And awareness creates accountability, right? Awareness creates a level of how can I put it?
The potential for accountability, but accountability relies on people to do the holding part.
Right. Right. Which goes back to education. If you don't educate the folks on how to hold those in power accountable for the actions that they take, then yeah, you have this lack of checks and balances, which is what our democracy is supposed to be, but it is not. Wait a minute. I think we're done with the changemaker questions. Are we done with those?
No, I just skipped around earlier because I wanted to ask a question that kind of pertains to.
Oh yeah.
I did see there were a few questions in the chat, so I don't want to miss those.
Yeah, we're gonna work on as soon as we get through this segment, we'll move on to that and get some of those questions knocked out. So you're just gonna have to skip that. I asked that question already. It'll be the one after. Skip way.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead with the next one. What will be your #1 priority if elected, and how does that benefit the Black community and communities of color in Allen County? Start with Stephanie.
My number one priority, kind of like I said earlier, is really about establishing and clarifying communication and evaluating where we're at. We're in an unprecedented point in our history. And I think it's most important for us to understand exactly where we're at and what resources we have and what challenges we're facing, and that we're communicating that adequately between all of the parts. You know, I mentioned earlier that I call Fort Wayne the overgrown Mayberry of the Midwest. We are the big city with a small town mentality, and that's great until you realize that we have responsibility for a lot of people, and it's not just Allen County. Allen County, where Allen County goes, Northeast Indiana and surrounding states follow. We have a lot of responsibility to set an example and to be a resource to the region. And ensuring that we understand and comprehend and communicate clearly really where we're at, what our challenges are, what our resources are, and what our options are. I think that's the most important thing for people going forward. They don't want fancy excuses or presentations or whatever. They just want to know what the deal is and what we're looking at and what we can do. And I'm trying to make sure that we do that.
Awesome. Melissa?
Like I said, my primary platform is mental health. I think that in this country, in this city, in this state, this world, we are not adequately dealing with mental health. And I think a lot of the things we're seeing across this country is because we're not dealing with the cause, and we're really just dealing with the symptoms. We're paying for a lot of people that are sitting in jail that probably have mental health issues and that have never been assessed. In my opinion, you break your arm, you go get your arm reset. You know, you get your eyes checked, you get your ears checked. Insurance doesn't pay for a mental health assessment when you're 10 years old. We should have times where we have mental health assessments. 8 men, we know men are more prone to psychotic breaks between the ages of 20 and 25. We know women are more prone to mental health issues between the ages of 27 and 32. You know, we know these things. So why are we not being proactive with what we're doing, getting the assessment, getting people therapy, getting people medications, and dealing with the issue so we're not paying for these things long term and we're dealing with them in the beginning and we're assessing the cause. So for me, and the other thing is, when it comes to mental health, you have to have people of color to go to. You know, you have to be able to access that. You know, I love the fact that Erin Lane and Janelle Lane are doing things with Courageous Healing. You know, they're doing amazing things, and they're intentional on doing that. You know, the Society of Black Mental Health Professionals is doing things. You know, these things are not, they've always been taboo, and this goes for white, Black, Hispanic, everything, but even more from my understanding in the Black community, it's even more like we don't talk about it. We don't deal with it. We don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about our emotions, and we, you know, okay, that's crazy Joe, leave him in the corner. We're not going to deal with this today. You know, so to me, and every single person, white, Black, Hispanic, somebody has a cousin, somebody has a brother, somebody has a sister, somebody has somebody in their family that is affected by mental health, and it's not been addressed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Do we have time for another question, or do we need to go to the next segment?
I think we have time.
Yeah. All right. I have a question here. So as females in a male-dominated leadership space, like the county council, how do you think the other council members will respond to you if you're elected? Melissa, you can start. I keep forgetting to select somebody. Melissa, you can start, and then Stephanie after that.
How are we always dealt with as females?
I want to get into it. To give us more. I need to hear it because it needs to be
is
talked
what
about.
it is.
Yeah, it needs to be talked about because these positions of authority that are predominantly male, there's a problem with that. There is a problem with that. And so I think it's really important that we start this kind of dialogue so that when we see these things taking place, we recognize them and they are already out in the open. So many times we just don't say anything or well, I do, but we don't, we just try to sweep things under the rug and we allow things to occur that shouldn't be occurring because we're not intentional about not saving space for that type of behavior. So that's why I wanted to hear from both of you how you feel, because one of you is going to get elected and we're going to see it.
I
And so
hope
we
both
might
of
as
us get elected.
Oh,
listen, I'm 100% good with that. I mean, I'm just
Honestly, I hope
saying.
all three of us get elected if you want to know the truth. So, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, it just is what it is. I mean, as a female, we work in it. We know what it is. We all work in a male dominated society. And I've been oppressed for just being a female in working in work situations just because I know I'm a female. I know they're treating me that way because that. And so I'm sure Stephanie's had it double time, if not then some more, but just, you know, it is what it is. I just feel like it's something that I know we're both aware of that we're going to have to deal with no matter what.
Absolutely.
So I have a very practical approach to it, which is basically the approach I take to everything. I'm going to bring snacks. That's what I do. I find that feeding people makes a huge difference. I am not kidding. These meetings for county council are first thing in the morning. Do you think any of those people have a decent breakfast before they come? No. Do you think they want some carbs and sugar and whatever? Do you think that's going to be helpful? No. Is this stuff that we've dealt with every day as women? Absolutely. I was a bartender. I was a server. I was even a pageant queen. So I've gotten all kinds of perspectives from guys and girls. And I'm more than capable of dealing with whatever comes my way. And I like to take a proactive approach. And so I find that people are capable of being their best self when they have, you know, something good to eat and, you know, something to drink. Hydration is one of the leading keys or leading factors in like dysfunction in people generally. We all function on a level of dehydration. And it seems really odd, but what I notice when I go to all these meetings is that everybody comes either before or after long days, you know, and nobody has a water bottle. Nobody has a snack. You know, they barely take a break for a bathroom. Come on, people, we're human. You can't just, you know, think through all of these things without some fuel in your brain. You know, that's just cruel and unusual. No wonder they make maybe uninformed decisions because they're hungry. Let's think about this. Sometimes it really is as basic as that. People don't think about the obvious things. If you're sitting in an uncomfortable seat and you're hungry, it's first thing in the day, you're probably not the most charitable self that you are. I'm not saying that's going to be the solution to everything, but I promise you, it'll make a difference.
Awesome. Awesome. So we have one last question in this segment we're going to hit before we move into questions from people in the Zoom, as well as those who have tuned in virtually. So this last question is, why should Black voters consider you for Allen County Council? Melissa?
Well, I've been working in the community since I was 14. So pretty much been in the community. I think that I'm connected. Do I think that I am fully understanding? Absolutely not. I'll never understand what it means to be a person of color in America, period. I can't. It's not possible. But I do believe that I am working towards equity. I believe I'm working, and my focus is to ensure that we have equality, and we don't. And that's the bottom line is we don't. The access is not there. It's not provided. And people just we don't have it. And we're not intentional when it comes to our county. I mean, you can go to 3 other areas of the county and then you go to the south side and it's obvious. Why are we not pumping money? Why are we not, putting things in the same place? I was sat in a meeting to discuss the fact that there's no splash pad on the south side. Like, what? There's not even a splash pad in a park on the south. I mean, the it's just not equitable. It's not equal. It's not, and that is what I'm working towards, and that's what I'm fighting for as well. So
Thank you. Stephanie?
Quick question. I see that we're just after 8. Are we doing questions from the chat after this?
Yes, we'll be
Okay.
starting because we'll do questions from like the live on Facebook, as well as questions from those who are in the Zoom with us.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that I made time for those. Can I ask for the question again, then, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So why should why should Black voters consider you for Allen County Council?
Well, I think that voters of any color should consider me for Allen County Council at large, because I'm running for Allen County Council at large, because anybody who knows me knows that I call myself a mutt. I'm a little bit of everything, and my life has been a series of trying to reconcile that and coming to terms and representing for all sides of my heritage and family and community. It comes naturally to me. And because when I registered to run as county council, no one else had stepped forward. And it was a week before the deadline. And as much as it terrifies me as a woman of color to have my address and name and face listed publicly, I'm more concerned about the well-being of my community, no matter the cost. So I think anyone in the community should vote for me, because people who know me know that my biggest weakness is that I care more about other people than I do about myself.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate those answers.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to go on to questions from our Zoom members. We have a lot of different, our Zoom members. We have different people from the community that we brought on. Do any of you, I know Minnie, I saw you had some questions. Girl, I saw you in that chat. She was ready to go. She got some questions. If any of y'all have some questions, let's start with you, Minnie, because I know you was tearing it up.
You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Minnie.
Give me 1 second to quiet my background. Hold on.
Okay.
You know, Zoom is really missing like a music background feature, because I don't know about you guys, but I have ADHD and I'm a little bit on the spectrum. And so music is what calms me and centers me. I would be happy to share with anybody who wants my Spotify playlist called Affirmation. It has some incredible songs. I'm not kidding. I was playing it up until the moment I connected with you guys and singing as loud as I can. So just FYI, I think about that. Like, we could use some background music.
Right.
That is hilarious that you said that.
Okay, so my first question was I want to actually read it verbatim. It's for both of you. Do you think that Karen Richards used the protest as a way to meet her prosecutor's quota, as well as enact fear in the young community to stop protesting?
Melissa, if you want to go first.
I'm going to scroll back up to the questions specifically.
And if you guys want to, you can type out your questions in the Zoom if you'd like. But you know, you can just chime in. Feel free to chime in wherever. Just, you know, raise your hand if you know how to use the hand emoji on here, or, you know, just chime in wherever you feel.
I mean, I can go ahead and, yeah. She said, do I think? I mean, probably. I don't know. I do know that there were a lot of things that happened to get things to stop down there. And, you know, I know a few nights after just picking people up at one point, and just, you know, even after the fact, I think that there was a lot of scare tactics used. The whole thing is just not how we should be doing this. Why are we putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into a tank, you know, that's driving down, that I mean, we're putting money into places. And I think a lot of our issues is we're just not dealing with things properly. Why are we sending officers to a suicide call? You know, we send officers as the first contact if we get a call that somebody's about to commit suicide. Well, you're automatically not de-escalating the situation because somebody shows up in a police uniform. So you're automatically throwing fuel on the fire. So to me, I think there's a lot of different processes across the board. So, you know, my initial answer would be yes, but I think there's so many different things going here. I think there were so many things to get things to be stopped. I think this is a systematic issue, and it's not just, I mean, they're all tied together. You know, our judges, the fact that, you know, right now we don't have good judges in our city, so they're all interlocked, intertied together. So yeah, I think I answered the question, but I think it's a bigger issue than just that specifically. I think it's an overreaching issue that systematically needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed again.
Stephanie?
As far as the prosecutor using the protest as a way to increase her budget, correct? That was the question, right?
Yeah.
Basically her quota, because we all know that every month police have a certain quota they're supposed to meet with arrests.
Oh, but not officially, though.
Not officially? Oh, wow. Look at that. You learn something new every day.
No,
But we
things
know they
like,
have,
things
we know
like that are
system is there.
illegal. They don't have things like quotas or things, at least not on the books. Things that happen, you know, informally. I mean, who knows? I do not have enough information to really get into that. I think I would refer back to what I said earlier, which is during the protest, I did try to forewarn that I saw this being used because budget season comes every year. And I absolutely saw this as being used as a tactic to raise the budget one way or another. So I like to think the best about people, but recognizing patterns and routines is what I'm good at. And unfortunately, we have a pattern and routine of opportunities like this being exploited for ways to pad a budget and to make room financially for things. And I think it was definitely at minimum an opportunistic adventure, if nothing else.
So
Okay,
just to
I
kind of play
appreciate it.
off of her
Oh, my
question. Oh, no, I just wanted to hit on something that you said. You said that that quotas aren't a thing. That is just like an internal incentive type of thing where they're like, hey, if you guys can get 25 arrests a week, then like that type. It's an internal thing.
I'm pretty sure that there's supposed to be like laws and whatnot against it. I would have to do some more research to like confirm and check whether or not those are valid. And if that's a state by state, a federal, there's a lot of different loopholes. It's understanding the different layers and the different levels of things that impact stuff. And there are some things that are mandatory on a federal level. And you also understand there are mandatory things and then there are recommended things. Mandatory things are things you will do. Recommended things are, this is our recommended practice. but you're not held to it. There's a difference. You have to read the fine print. Reading and comprehension, number one. It is critically important because they hide all of the information in the fine details, and they literally count on people being bored. That's why county council has public comment first thing prior to the first thing in the morning meeting, and city council has it last after the late meetings in the evening. It's not accidental.
Wow. Minnie, you had another question, didn't you?
Yeah, and I appreciate both of those answers. So my final question is, despite the mental health education, do you guys believe that despite the full understanding of mental health, why aren't real people more included in advocating for what they personally deal with versus those who are simply textbook educated on the issue?
Well, one, I think it's taboo. I don't think people want to talk about it. I think the people that do want to talk about it, I think they need to be more included. Me personally, I've dealt with mental health issues with people in my family probably most of my life. I mean, there's people that we have struggled with that have mental health issues, and we've walked alongside them and went through the cyclical nature of mental health issues and their mental health issues, losing them for 3 days and not knowing where they were. It's terrifying. It's terrifying to not know where to go, not know what to do, and not know who to call when you have a loved one who is struggling with a mental health issue, because we don't deal with it as a society. So I believe that people who, a lot of times, especially people who are dealing with it, one, because it's mental health and you can't see it, feel it, touch it. It's not like a broken arm. So people who have mental health issues, first, typically it takes them a while to address and admit that they even have an issue to start with, first of all. And second of all, I think I love Carriage House is a great place because they deal with it, they talk about it, they acknowledge it, and then they have social groups and to discuss these things as well. So I think more people who have it, who have dealt with it and who are dealing with it need to speak up, because then that empowers other people to be able to say, okay, this is what I've been dealing with my family member, but I didn't know what this was. Or this is what I've been dealing with myself, but I've been in denial and I didn't want to admit it. So I think more people need to be involved in that conversation who specifically are dealing with it. I think sometimes it's hard to get those people to do that because of the denial.
Yeah.
I will go ahead and segue into that with my admission that I have chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. I have severe depression, anxiety, social anxiety, and probably a number of other things. Oh, dyscalculia. Good Lord, dyscalculia. Please, can everyone put that on their list? Dyslexia is one thing. Dyscalculia is something else. People are not just bad at math. Dyscalculia is an actual disability. Yeah, it is. It actually messes with your time space orientation. So like your comprehension of time and distance is not normal. Guess what? I have dyscalculia. It took me a long time to find that out. I am currently in therapy and on medication. Thank goodness. I dealt with it a long time without it. 35 years without therapy or medication, just intermediate therapy in school. That's not right. That's not fair. I am an exception to the rule. I am a rare exception to the rule. They call me like that rare, like survival thrive. I don't know. There's a name for it, but like I am a rare exception to the rule of someone who goes through the sort of circumstances that a lot of people in our community do. But I was lucky enough to come out of it stronger on the other side. through the grace of my conviction and my dedication and my commitment to others and to service and to the community and to a greater good than myself. But that is not something that is a commonplace thing. And yes, people who experience mental health issues should be given more of a platform and a microphone. This is why I'm running for county council, among other things, because yes, I have mental health issues. I need therapy and medication because I need somebody to talk about how awful this world is and how it makes me want to cry on a daily basis and how hard it is to get up and be positive and to go forward and try and create positive, beneficial things in this community that regularly beats me down. We definitely need more representation, and Janelle and Aaron are doing great things. There are a number of other therapists that are doing a lot. But again, it comes back to a systemic thing and where we have institutionally prioritized our funding and our resources and acknowledgement. And, you know, I made a promise to break the cycle in my family. Because I figured if it wasn't going to kill me, I was going to break it. One way or another, one of us was going to win, but I wasn't going to pass on the things that I inherited to another generation.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's a great question, Minnie.
Yeah, I mean, it there's like a stigma, you know, you don't want to admit. I think that's like one of the biggest problems is you don't want to admit that you have this issue. You know, you don't want anybody to know that you have this issue.
I put it in the chat, epigenetics. Epigenetics is the science, it's the study of how hardship in one generation can be passed genetically to another generation. It's been studied in drought and famine victims, as well as Holocaust victims. This is a like certified and like verified thing. I'm sure they're probably going to use this generation as another benchmark to determine epigenetics and what happens to our genome and our development when, as a society and as a large group, we are subjected to horrendous experiences. You know, this is a different form of evolution and adaptation, and it has an impact. And, you know, we are the product of all of that has come before us, the positive and the negative. You know, I am genetically the inheritor. You know, my genes are connected to like Charlemagne and the territorial governor of Tennessee and the Native American bloodlines and the African American bloodlines through really horrible things, broken promises and stolen lives, you know, and in a way we all suffer some cost. Yeah. And a lot of that manifests in emotional and psychological and physical, you know, challenges. And recognizing that we have an opportunity to resolve some of that and looking at it from that perspective instead of just being afflicted by it is the way that I chose to approach it, is that I have an opportunity with my life to make a difference and to change the tenor of that trajectory rather than just continue it.
So I'm going to read a question from Breon Jones. I know him as Marcel. Okay. So his question is, the city council archives have been missing since 2012, which coincidentally coincides with the Black Chamber of Commerce creation. Can we count on you to keep that information public to ensure that Black businesses and agendas are being discussed in city council meetings or county council meetings? Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, without knowing, I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about what he's talking about, so I'm not educated on this piece. So it would be actually good for me to become educated on this.
Right.
But I would think that the Black businesses and agendas should be discussed as to, like I said before, we are focused literally on 3 quadrants of the county, and we really need to focus on all the quadrants of the county. from an equitable perspective.
Stephanie?
They bring up an interesting topic, which I generally find that getting more information is usually helpful. I like to take the route of doing as much due diligence as possible. It does take a little bit more time, but I prefer to look into things before I make a determination. Generally, there tend to be issues when it comes around to like transition of systems and administrations and things like that. So determining what actually happened at that time would go a long way in determining, how to respond to that. I think there's probably a very good chance, having served as a document controller and internal auditor responsible for documents and records and whatnot in an organization, given the volume of things that are generated by the city and council and other things, it is totally sensible to me, or logical, that things prior to that date might not have been digitized and made public, because cost to store that and make it accessible online is expensive. And we're talking about, over a decade of stuff. That's not a small amount of data. I have like
Right.
20,000 pictures, just pictures, and I'm not even talking about a decade. Okay. So when you think about the amount of data and documents and space that would take, and I'm sure if we figured in whatever shifts and changes and budget and whatever else like that, I'm guessing
Then they're going to
that is
ask for more
probably-
money.
Right. It's not an easy answer. You know what they pay
Yeah.
for to go to law school so they can teach you to say one thing? It depends.
Right.
Because it really just depends. It depends on who was in charge, what the situation was, what the time was. There's more information that's needed. That's why I go back to communication, doing due diligence, understanding the underlying factors. These things don't happen in a vacuum. They don't happen as a standalone thing. There are a lot of other factors that contribute to creating these circumstances and to the decisions that therefore are made. And understanding those things and understanding them in a timely manner when it's being made and impacting those discussions then rather than in a reactive manner is what I'm trying to bring to our community as a whole.
So I want to kind of switch over a little bit and go into, we have a couple of Facebook questions. The first one is from Aaron McCarthy. And I think this is regarding to both of you. What would you do to make county council meetings more accessible to the community?
Well, I
Melissa?
do think that the fact that we've been on Zoom, it's been more accessible. So I think that should continue, because keeping those Zoom, even, as an option. I'm not saying to throw out person to person once COVID's over, but I think do both.
Absolutely. Stephanie?
I think that prior to COVID, the meetings were pretty accessible. There was more of the awareness and desire of the community to participate. I think it was already on the cable TV. I do have a problem with the fact that our free cable TV is only accessible if you're paying for cable.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make any sense to me. So the Facebook, I think, is a definite first start. I think that they've definitely were hesitant about it, and for a good reason, because when you open things up to the public, you entertain a lot of people who just want to make noise, but that's part of being public. And I think the Facebook Live and the online broadcasts are a great first start. I think that we might want to reelect the cable access stuff. I hate to say it, but it just doesn't make sense that the public is funding something that the public can't access unless they pay more for it on top of that.
Right.
I don't know. I'm that weird person that asks those questions. Like, you can convince me that this is a sensible thing, but we need to have a conversation about it. Like, make that argument. That's all I'm asking. Like, don't expect us to just accept it. Like, explain it. If you can't justify it. I was in debate in school and I loved debate, because debate challenges people not to just make an argument, but justify it. You know, you would have a stance about something, but defend it. Give us some reason, explain it. If you can't explain it to a child, you don't understand it. And I will stand by that because, like, you know, historical philosophers have agreed to the same. Like, if you can't explain it to a child, you have faulty logic.
I love that. I love that. If you can't explain it to a child, then you don't understand it. I love that.
Yeah.
So Aaron McCarthy also asked, and I believe this pertains to you, Stephanie, what does making space mean to you?
I saw that one. Yeah, thanks for asking, Aaron. So making space means referring to the fact that more often than not, I am the only person of color, especially the only woman of color in the room. Sometimes having ever been in the room. That's disturbing. And that's unfortunate. It's 2020, soon to be 2021. We're in a new decade soon. And I think we should be past the point when I walk in a room and people are surprised to see a woman of color. When people mistake me for just an assistant and not a person with knowledge and experience. Making room for me means making it more common to see people like me in positions of influence. And not by me, I mean anybody that's not just a white male, you know, psi male or cis male or whatever they call it. You know, we have a more diverse population. And despite the perhaps inclination of, you know, a percentage of Hoosiers to cling to this outdated mentality, the reality is it's no longer just the Klan state.
Mm-hmm.
Hate to say it, but
sorry. So we have a question from one of our members here in the Zoom. Her name is Misha Donaldson. And she says, I love equity because it means everyone gets what they need. How are we advocating for places like the 06 that has the highest infancy death rate in Indiana? So 46806, highest infancy death rate in Indiana.
So I pastor in the 03. I pastor by the res, and then we've done different financial studies across the state. And the 03 is actually the poorest zip code in the entire state. If anybody didn't know that, we are the poorest zip code. And not only are we the poorest zip code, the richest zip code is only 11 miles away, which is in Leo. So we have in the state of Indiana, the poorest and the richest zip code in the entire state. So just for me directly, how I'm advocating for food. I'm advocating for services. I'm advocating for the park that is 2 blocks away from our church. The people, building in the community. What are the community's needs? Finding out, what do you want? You know, a lot of times people always come in and say, well, you need this or you need that, instead of talking to the people in the community of, what do you need? Let's talk, let's build together. Let's see what you want versus what I think you need. You know, so that to me, it's relationship. It's about building relationships, and it's about having those relationships with the people who are in that community.
I love that. Stephanie?
I completely agree with Elsa. Relational development is at the foundation of everything that I do. You know, I've been working on launching a program called Cultivate that focuses on providing an environment that encourages relational development rather than transactional interactions. Because when you know people, you want to do better for them. And I've lived since I moved to Fort Wayne, I've lived in the 06, 07, 08, and now 05. And I mean, my heart breaks. I can't tell you how much I've cried over this sort of stuff. Like, it's not an easy question. You know, I'm committed every day to doing what I can to improve stuff everywhere. And I guess I start with the mentality of, you know, what's good for the least of us is good for the most of us. And so starting with where we have the biggest discrepancy and where we have the biggest challenges, and working to bring them up to a place of parity with at least the minimums that we expect everywhere else in our community. It really disheartens me how we separate ourselves by street, by zip code, by neighborhood, by ethnicity. As a person of, you know, mixed ethnicity and variable zip codes and locations, you know, like, it's hard. I don't like being judged by where I live or what I look like. I prefer to be judged by who I am and what I do. And I think that in our community, everybody should be a priority, and we should do as best as we can. And I know that's kind of an idealistic Pollyanna view, but that's the kind of view I think that our leaders should have, because we should be striving for a high ideal, not just a minimum realistic expectation, because you always miss your goal. And if you strive for more, then you achieve more than if you strive for a minimum.
Nice answer. Yeah, I mean, I really didn't know that the 46806 is the highest infancy death rate. That's very
Infant and
eye-opening.
maternal, and you know, I just want to specify, it's not just the children that are dying, it's the mothers that are dying from preventable and from curable issues. And in a lot of cases, it's very similar to what happened to Serena Williams, when they don't believe the women of color, you know, and they're not receiving adequate health care and resources.
Yeah. So I had a comment on Facebook from Ennis Brown. He said that 47406 in Bloomington is the poorest, and 03 in Fort Wayne is the second.
Then that must have changed in the last couple of years.
Yeah. He said he works on a committee for that exact situation, so that's the only way he knew.
Oh, well, that's
But
good
yeah.
information, because that, as of 2 years ago, it was 03.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to
making progress a little bit at a time.
Right.
Right.
So I had a question. I know we talked about this before, Stephanie, plenty of times, regarding other individuals who are in positions. My question is this: will a position on county council, how do I put it, muzzle you or change your spunk? Okay, we see spunky Stephanie now, but once you get that position, are we still going to hear your voice as loud as it is now? Because it's, you know, you already know, you see them, they say, oh, I'm gonna, you know, this is, I'm gonna do this and that and blah blah blah, and then they get in there and it's like they're quieted. They're quieted by the group. They're quieted by you know, their position. So, you know, how is it going to be different?
I'll go first. Yeah, what you see is what you get. 2020 is a year of a definite, you know, I've gone through different transitions in my life. And there's been phases in my life where, because of the things that I've gone through, you know, when I've come to realizations and when I've come to acceptance of different things, it's allowed me to kind of develop a little more. And 2020 has been a crucible of a year. And really, what that left for me is a determination to use every ounce of energy that I have, to speak up, because I can and I want to. And I've been proven that being quiet and courteous, not that I'm going to be rude, because like etiquette's kind of my deal, but like being quiet and, you know, hiding in a corner is not going to help our community. And trying to just be, you know, supportive in the background is good to a point, but we really need people who are willing to step forward and to speak out loudly. And I've survived enough things in my life to this point that I am very clear that I am on borrowed time. I promised this time in service to my community a long time ago. And that's a commitment that I intend to uphold to whatever ends are necessary. Understanding, and this is not like an absolutist sort of a thing, but just understanding history and understanding that that means an increased risk of physical harm potentiality. Still, I think that our community deserves representation that is organizationally agnostic, that is passionate, and that is committed. And if you saw my album that I released earlier, you know, you'll see a lot of faces from a lot of different orientations, because I talk to everybody, because we're all people. And I don't see political parties. I see people and issues that we have to deal with as people. And I work with everyone. I'm not going anywhere. And if I get this position, it's not going to go to my head. It's just another means to an end and an opportunity and a platform. You know, from when my friends encouraged me to run for a pageant to when I got chosen as the intern and had the opportunity to go to DC and to speak for our entire region, you know, all of that is with the most humility possible and the most like understanding of the responsibility and burden that is there. You know, I promised myself as a young kid that I would be the person and the kind of role model that I didn't see then. And I'm committed to fulfilling that promise. And that doesn't have room for ego or kind of self-preservation tactics. Because I have to set an example for the generations that come after us, because they have a huge challenge ahead of them, and they need motivational, you know, role models, not cautionary ones.
Okay,
Melissa,
I'm gonna hold you to that.
what about you, Melissa? Will you
Well,
remain as vigilant post-election as you are now, or are
yeah.
there hidden factors that we were unaware of that may take over?
Well, my primary thing for me is my faith. So I believe in something bigger than myself, and I'm grounded in that. And so when it comes to what leads and guides me, it has to do with what I believe based upon and seeking something bigger than myself. And so I don't plan on being wishy-washy. I don't plan on changing my stance anytime soon. I plan on being who I am, and this is who I am. So what I'm saying right now and what I've said tonight is what I would say moving forward, sitting in a room with 6 county council people that might not be you know, that might be white males. I don't know. Hopefully that they're all not, you know, in 2021. So, but like I said, who I am, that's who I am. So my primary focus is I'm an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church. And so, you know, I'm convicted to move, make ways, do what I need to do, and do what I need to do when I feel called by God to do something more. So I serve people, and that's who I am, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, no matter what, win, lose, or draw. I'm going to continue to serve. I'm going to continue to fight for equity. I'm going to continue to serve for justice, or to fight for justice and for the rights of people, because we've got a long way to go, and we need a lot of people that are fighting for those same things.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to do one last question from Terry in the Zoom, and then we'll wrap up. So the question is, what do you think you could do to help with the housing for people of color? Qualifications, not only for renting, but owning, is at an unfair advantage. It can take months, sometimes years, for someone making a basic income to find a home here in Indiana. Start with you, Stephanie.
Yeah, that's a gee, it depends. No.
Yeah.
No, that's I mean, the housing epidemic it's not a joke. My fiance is a Marine, and we are fortunate enough to have been able to utilize his GI benefits to help to purchase our home. Prior to that, I had been renting my house for the better part of a decade with no hope of ever purchasing it or the ability to do so. That's not an accident. The housing epidemic is it's horrible. It's really bad. You know, people who are just trying to get by are getting their houses bought on our next door neighbors. Like their house is getting flipped underneath them as renters. You know, their property owner sold their house and the person that bought it is selling it again, you know, all within 30 days. And they're just like subject to the whims of these people without any chance or recourse. And I think a lot of that goes back to institutional things like redlining and cutting out the middle class in general and reducing our ability to have home ownership. I can't change federal stuff yet. And for this county councilwoman at large, I can't change federal stuff. But we can have an impact on local things. And I can't promise specific outcomes, but I can promise the desire and the willingness to bring up the conversation and to have the conversation at every opportunity. Because if we're not having the conversation, then it's never going to change. And we haven't been having that conversation the way that we should be. And so as county councilwoman at large, I can, commit to ensuring that we have conversations as often as I can possibly bring them up without just being a pest and hindering the, function of our community. But it's a very complicated situation that doesn't have an easy solution. And anyone who can tell you otherwise is probably lying to you.
Melissa?
It's very similar answer. I mean, we won't have much power when it comes to this, but it's horrible. I mean, across the board, and housing in general. I mean, it obviously impacts people of color even more, but I mean, just in general, I know so many people who just can't, and not even only just get a home, but even rent. Like it is so bad. Accessible housing is so bad. And with COVID, it exposed how worse it even is than I think I think we knew it, but oh my gosh, it just kind of threw it into the forefront. Like, okay, now we have 600 evictions on top of COVID as well. I mean, it's just, it is a huge issue that also, I mean, the way to get a house, I mean, I think I have decent credit. I've paid decently, and it was hard I've been denied to refinance, denied to like get a house initially. Like you would think we would make this much easier for people so we could build up our neighborhoods, so we could build up. I mean, there's so many, especially I was having a conversation with Diane Rogers about a month ago, and we were going through the neighborhood, and she's like, 80% of these houses are now rentals. So when we talk about cleaning up our neighborhoods, when people don't have that investment, and own the home, it's hard, it's harder to get that investment. It's harder to get that
Right.
buy-in in the neighborhood because they don't own it. They don't feel like it's theirs. They're just throwing away money on rentals and they're not getting
Mhm.
anything back. And so it's across the board. It is a major, major, major issue.
Thank
If
you.
I can add, I would say that as county council, there is an opportunity with the tax levy issue to have a conversation about the tax levies. I'm pretty high in strategic and I notice patterns, and I've noticed a pattern, no offense, Melissa, but I've noticed a pattern of buildings that are owned that are classified as churches that are not being facilitated. And I'm curious, to have a conversation about the dispensation and position of some of these properties and who owns them and what they're classified as, because it's interesting that a lot of the properties that are neglected may, in some cases, also be classified as churches, which makes them tax exempt, which means that not only are they being a detriment to the community, but they're being a detriment at the cost of the community. Really doing the due diligence and identifying who the property owners are of problem properties, and doing what we can to look at the tax levies and assessments on those properties, and perhaps looking at an alternative solution to address delinquent and non-responsive landowners.
Awesome.
Great.
Great answers, ladies.
That's great.
So we're going to do our closing segment here. This is the last question of the night, I promise.
Y'all have been great. Thank you.
Yes.
On with
So
us.
much insight. I've learned,
Oh, man,
I've
yeah.
laughed, I've thought about, this has been an awesome, I've loved this. So thank you so much. In closing, when elected into county council, because we know you're going to get elected, right? So when you are elected, what action items can you commit to as it pertains to those facing injustices and inequality in Fort Wayne that the people can count on and hold you accountable for? So what can you commit to that we can say, Stephanie Henry said she was going to do this, and we can hold you accountable to see that happen.
Are you
Melissa, you wanna
asking me
start?
specifically?
Okay, I'm asking both of you. Both of you, closing question.
I guess I would say I would like to know what it is the community would like to hold us accountable to. What is the most important thing? And I think that a lot of that also is predicated on their understanding of having a conversation about what is important to them and how we can actually impact that, and understanding that, and then determining those things, I think would be a starting point. And as far as just the blanket commitment is that I'm open to the conversation and willing to have it, and to whatever extent necessary. I walked away from my job. Y'all need to understand this. I left a corporate job at 35,000 plus with benefits to do this full time because I did not believe that our community was getting the representation that it needed, and that I felt this is my calling. And I'm committed to that. And as your county councilwoman at large, I will continue to do that for everyone in the county as much as I'm possible.
Okay.
Melissa, what about you?
I would say similar to Stephanie. I mean, it would be what are we being called to the carpet for? What do you need from us? Because to me, why I'm doing this is to serve, and to serve in a bigger capacity, or a more impactful capacity, I guess would be the best way of putting it. To how can I make the greatest impact to serve the community? And what does that mean? And so to me, if that means getting, the sheriff to send a mental health professional to a suicide instead of an officer, that's a huge change. If that means, domestic issues to where, my whole thing is, like I said before, I think we have a system that needs deconstructed and reconstructed. And a lot of us don't know what that looks like. I think a lot of us have some great ideas, and I think we need some different perspectives at the table to be able to do these things.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, absolutely.
That goes
Love
back
those
to
answers.
needing more women in places of power, locally and nationally. Because ladies think about things differently, right? We are all very, very aware of how men process things. We've been doing this for a while, right? So I think it's high time that we really start to stimulate our conversations and our leadership circles with more perspectives. And the perspectives of women are so incredibly valuable. I wish you both the best. I think I'm so thankful you guys are here. It means a lot to us and everybody else who's listening and watching too.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for having us. This has been a lot of fun. It's been a rough year. I'm generally like an introvert, and like I have social anxiety, but 6 to 8 months of isolating gives you a different perspective on that. I miss people.
Right. Man, it's been tough. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been so great. It's been super insightful. I appreciate it. You guys have a good night. Vote for Melissa Fisher and Stephanie Henry.
Yes,
Yeah.
do it. Go out to the polls.
Vote for them.
That's right. Do it. Do it. Thank you all.
All right,
Yes,
y'all.
thank you, everyone.
Yes,
Have a good
please
night.
vote.